Hello and welcome to Crystal Confab. Join me and my friends Ashley, Adam, and Kyle as we confab about a new crystal each week. And this week, we get to talk about something really special, unusual, rare, wonderful, magical, and it is watermelon tourmaline. And I think we should hand it on over to Ashley to give us a lowdown on what makes it special.
Oh, hello everyone. So excited to be doing another episode of Crystal Confab. I love this crystal. This has long ranked in my top five, maybe even my top three crystals, dare I say, for a while. I named it out loud as my favorite, which, if you're anything like me, you know, is so hard to pick an absolute favorite crystal. But I love this stone for so many reasons. Largely, though, because I am so drawn to the color. I'm definitely a big color person. I get a lot out of the different colors of stones that I work with. And there's something so magical about this combination of the green and the pink that just makes me feel some kind of way. And I want to take a moment to kind of talk about the difference between, in my eyes at least, and I'll let my fellow co-hosts decide for themselves here, but in my eyes, between a true watermelon tourmaline and a bicolor tourmaline. So let me sort of explain. A bicolor tourmaline could be any tourmaline that has two colors. And usually these are going to be at opposite ends of the stone. So you'll often have, a different colored cap. Sometimes you'll have more than two colors in a long tourmaline crystal. And this is pretty common. We see this a lot, that there's this really distinct color zoning that can happen. And this is one of the things that makes these stones so incredibly magical. But watermelon tourmaline is a little bit different because rather than the color happening different on one end of the crystal and the other, it actually happens from the inside out. So there is this colorful core, in this case, that is pink, and then this sort of shell or exterior. In the case of watermelon tourmaline, that would be green. And so what happens when that is sliced is you get these really stunning concentric circles of color. And this is one of the things that I think is so special about this stone. And so I just want to sort of put out there that, just because you see a piece of tourmaline and it happens to be pink and green, I wouldn't necessarily always call that watermelon. It has to have those concentric circles. And in researching for a blog post I wrote just a little while back, um, I found through mindat.org, which one of the best websites out there for great info about crystals, that the first time the name watermelon was used to describe tourmaline goes back to 1910 in Maine, when some was found. The name was coined by George Robley Howe. So that was pretty exciting that this has really only been a name that we've used for about 100 years, little over 100 years. And it really had to do with that idea of those concentric zones of color, because when you slice that stone, you get the green exterior and the pink center, and it looks just like a slice of watermelon. And, there's definitely a connotation that happens, especially here in America, I think, like summer barbecues and picnics and, beautiful watermelon that you enjoy. It's my favorite summer fruit. And so there's just a lot of happiness that emanates from this stone, even just with that sort of connotation of the watermelon color. But it's this color zoning that I find particularly special because it creates almost like this little lens when it is in these slices, where we have that green exterior, which I kind of associate a lot with um, kind of creating like a protective shield. Green tourmaline on its own, I'll often use for shielding, for dissolving or removing unwanted energy from the energy body, that sort of thing. But when you have this watermelon tourmaline with that beautiful pink core that's so connected to the heart, this is a way to really focus your actions and the way that you show up in the world in love. And there's a really simple ritual that you can try with some watermelon tourmaline to do this. And it is easiest with a little slice. You could try it with like a raw crystal, but when it's sliced thin and you can really see through it, even if it's just a small piece, that's when this works best. So I love to hold this over the heart, close my eyes, take a few deep breaths, and then take that little slice and hold it up to one eye. And I like to really gaze through that central pink core of the crystal. And this acts like a little lens. It's like a little point of focus to root or center your actions in love. It's kind of like, the saying like looking through rose-colored glasses, but in this case, we're looking through this love-tinted lens of watermelon tourmaline. And this really helps shift our perspective and shift the way that we show up by seeing things from a new place, seeing things from that place of love. Like, imagine what the world would be like if all of us rooted our actions in love first. And this is kind of what this practice reminds you to do. And it's this literal shift in perspective that helps us just get in tune with that energy. Um, I like to sort of make a little intention when I do this, that I'm going to root my actions in love, that I'm going to show up with more love, that I'm going to show up for myself, for my community, for my family from that place of love. And, really think about how that would shift your life if you were able to do that more. And then you can carry that little stone with you as a talisman for reminding you to put love first when you can, to put love into those everyday actions, big and small. Um, so I know I just kind of blathered a whole bunch about that, but this is really like one of my favorite crystals for this. So thanks for turning it over to me, Nicholas. I would love to hear what everyone else is thinking.
I love that activity of actually, I've never actually done that of looking through the rose-colored glasses kind of practice. There is a bit of an astrological time when this would be quite relevant. You know, when we think of watermelon tourmaline, there's going to be a bit of a chat about love today, and we'd probably go, oh, it's very much probably a Venus crystal. But when you look at the outer planet, what is considered the higher octave of Venus is Neptune. And Neptune is about aesthetic and inspiration and the arts and how we feel when that kind of feeling, that kind of real like life is beautiful type of thing. Now, when Neptune is direct, so not retrograde, we kind of have those rose-colored glasses on, and we can tend to kind of go, yeah, we put up with, oh yeah, that's just my partner. They're always in a foul mood in the mornings, or oh, my boss is, going through a divorce, they're allowed to be nasty to me and that type of thing. When Neptune goes retrograde, it takes its energy away from Earth, and we tend to get this reality check, and we start to see things as they truly are. Now, this can be a little bit of a slap in the face because the rose-colored glasses come off, and there may be times when you hear Neptune going into retrograde that you're kind of losing faith in everything because you're starting to see the world as it really is. And I think what Ashley just suggested is that meditation of maybe just okay, remind us that when we do work through that filter of love, it would be really, really beautiful. So it could be a good time, maybe when Neptune goes into retrograde, but any time when it's just a harsh time. Yeah.
And just on a really amazing note, there's actually an American designer who creates sunglasses out of slices of watermelon tourmaline and different tourmalines. I think her name's Naomi Inns Designs, and she wire wraps the slices, and you can actually buy them and wear them, and they look amazing. Sorry for that side note.
We've just lost Ashley. She's gone Googling to buy herself a pair already. I can see that.
I'm honestly pretty whole idea of these glasses. Um, I had no idea that that was a thing. It's hard to find large slices. I am so fortunate to have a really, really large slice of watermelon tourmaline. It's one of my favorite things. But the other thing I love is the color variation in those greens and pinks that show up. Sometimes they're so soft, sometimes they're really, really deep and vibrant. They're just pretty magical.
Can I ask as well? I probably would say geology is out of the group. I'm probably the weakest in my geology. I understand when like you're talking about the bicolored tourmalines, where obviously as the crystal's been growing, there's been a mineral that's soaked in, given it that color. something's changed in the environment, so the colors changed. How do we actually get that wrapping in the crystal? Nicholas?
Yeah, I mean, similar kind of idea. So what we see in the bicolored shift is like consistent growth all at once, same mineral content. It's all accreting in the same direction. But, think of like all those beautiful cubes of fluorite that we'll see that have, fine bands of yellow and fine bands of blue. It's the same kind of thing where it's starting from the inside out. So we're getting that manganese-rich inner core to grow first, and then a later stage finishes with something that's probably rich in iron or chromium or vanadium. It can be a little bit different in each location, but it's just two very distinct phases. And one of my favorite things about some of the like really fine watermelon tourmalines is you get this little colorless bit of just like a little ribbon of transparent nothing in between the two, and it's just like the glue that holds them together. And it reminds me of that perfect zone in a watermelon. You've got the green rind, the white interior, and then that fleshy pink juiciness in there.
And
Oh,
for our listeners in the UK, especially anyone going to London, please visit the Natural History Museum. They have a series of slices of lidocotite tourmaline, watermelon tourmaline, and it's a series, and they're about this big each one, and it shows that color zoning and color shift that is incredible and even more complex than just the green and the pink. There's like yellows and there's blacks and there's seeds and stuff through it. It's incredible to see.
One of my favorite mineral collections on Earth. If we ever talk about emerald, maybe I'll tell that story. But like, yeah, that lidocotite specimen is really wonderful.
so Nicholas, how do you kind of work with watermelon tourmaline? Is it a love crystal for you?
Yes and no. It's not necessarily love in a romantic sense, which is a theme, we've certainly talked about on the show already. But I can think back to like the first time I read something about watermelon tourmaline that made it click for me. I'd gotten some not super expensive ones on my, school kid budget when I could manage that, back in the day when watermelon tourmaline was not the price it was today. And it was a fun stone. I enjoyed that it was multicolored, but being like red-green colorblind, I think some of the magic has always been lost on me, especially with lower quality, less saturated stones, which were, of course, the only ones in my budget. But I came across the work of one of my favorite, now dearly departed crystal authors by the name of Jane Ann Dow. And toward the end of her book, Crystal Journey, she's got this chapter on what she calls crystal families. So she's kind of segregated all the others. These are stones of the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, the spiritual body. And then she's got a few extra chapters at the end, and it's the stone families where tourmaline like really gets its mainstay, and she groups together the pinks and the greens under the same description because watermelon kind of creates a bridge between the two of them. And her work, among other things, she studied thanatology, which is the death of dying. She got an advanced degree in that later in life. But on her way toward that, she coached critically ill kids. She worked with a lot of terminal patients of all ages. And back when people weren't doing the integrative medicine thing, she was like at the forefront for it. And she noticed the kinds of people drawn to this little suite of tourmaline colors, the pinks, the greens, and the watermelon. And there were often folks who were like working on integrating lessons around love. And she noted that the green tourmaline was really about the kind of dynamic outward expression of love. The pink tourmaline was this inward flux of love. Maybe we could call that self-love. And that the watermelon was like the mediator between the two and helped to balance this inflow and outflow of love, which made it really good for caregivers who often prioritize other people's needs ahead of their own. The more I've gotten to work with this stone, the more I've seen that in action. In your average piece, and our, we'll say maybe idealized piece of watermelon tourmaline, of course, we've got a nice, big, juicy pink center and much less of the green stuff on the outside, just like Ashley's holding up. So it's something that we have to have that visual reminder that although love is not a finite resource, our capacity to manage anything at a given time is finite, right? I can only put my attention on so much at once. The majority of that probably should be like prioritizing my self-care, my self-love. If I burn out, if I run out of this resource, I can't give any of it to anyone else, maybe ever again. And that was the kind of pattern that Jane Ann saw over and over again in her life. Over the rest of the work that I've done with minerals and everything else, I've stumbled upon a few little like light bulb moments that have cemented this a little bit further. So my favorite piece of watermelon tourmaline is mostly not tourmaline anymore, which I know sounds like a puzzle, but that's because it is a formation called a pseudomorph. So what we have is this lovely green elbaite on the outside. Elbaite is the species name by which we know many of the brightly colored tourmalines. And on the inside, we've got pink sparkly stuff. But it is, in fact, what we know as lepidolite or polylithionite, a variety of mica that's also rich in lithium and rubidium and some other stuff. And it has only selectively replaced the pink interior core. It won't be able to do that to the outer core. And, trying to reflect on this, I've noted that there is a kind of softness, a permeability that we owe to ourselves to be delicate, to be graceful, to be gentle. And just like the watermelon tourmaline, the bicolored tourmalines as well, if you get the ones with the kind of lateral versus concentric color zones, again, it's the selective manganese-rich pink to red layers that will be replaced, never the green ones by this specific reaction, at least. And so we sometimes need to also remember that balancing the inflow and outflow of love means that we've got to have a viable container to hold what we're doing. We need the strength, the resilience, the impermeability that those iron or vanadium or chrome rich layers are going to give to the outside. I mean, think about what iron means to us. It is strengthening, it is grounding, it is stabilizing. We use chromium to, plate other things to make them non-reactive. I don't know enough about vanadium as a metal on its own yet, so we'll leave that to be continued. But there is this theme of healthy boundaries that comes from that. And yet the inside is still allowed to be soft and gooey. It's still allowed to dissolve and turn into something else under the pressures of life. It is given permission to be in a state of flux. And I think one of the most beautiful messages that I get from the watermelon tourmaline, whether or not it's been pseudomorphed, is that we also can vary how and where we distribute love, attention, energy. Love as a cosmic force is infinite, but we have finite bodies. We have finite time in these bodies. We have finite resources that we can channel through and to and from our bodies, our lives, our attention. And so we have to get that balance of the inflow and outflow of love to be perfect. And perfect is not, a thing that we can quantify and put it on a shelf and say, look, I did it. It's perfect. We're done. It is a constantly moving, messy, dynamic, ever-changing thing. And sometimes it means only keeping the outer shape and changing the inner makeup of stuff. It means getting messy and deciding you didn't like the way it was before. And so you rearrange it. And I think we have to take away from watermelon tourmaline permission to do that, permission to have grace, permission to say, yes, you mean a lot to me and I'm going to be there for you. Also, I can't do that if I don't sleep tonight. Also, I can't do that. It doesn't have to be a but, it doesn't have to be a however, it can be both and. And that's one of the most important lessons that I've gotten. And it had to come from this really imperfect piece that doesn't have the majority of its tourmaline composition left over.
Okay, I love this so much, and I feel like I'm not sure why my video isn't coming up. Is it coming up for all of you or no?
You're looking fine to us,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, great. So I am not sure why that you just said everything you did, Nicholas, other than I feel like, sometimes those things that are meant for everyone, they just like really speak to you so deeply. So I'm feeling like there were some really important things for me to hear in what you just said. But one of the takeaways is kind of that idea of that that container that holds everything. And that balance that you kind of like mentioned this briefly, but that ratio between that outer shell and the interior. And so I want to show this is my favorite piece right here, my really large, gorgeous slice. And it's very thin, but I got this years and years and years and years ago, back when this was still affordable. But this is my little rose-colored glass. But look how much pink there is compared to that green. And so that really resonated to hear you say, yeah, I need to be able to take care of myself so that I can then show up in the ways that I need to show up in the world and be there to support others. And so it's kind of like looking at that ratio of, yes, there's a lot of self-care involved to be able to show up and do those things. Kyle, what has your experience been like with watermelon tourmaline?
For me, I have thoroughly enjoyed watermelon tourmaline for as long as I've been working with crystals, learning about it in gemology. It's easily one of the most fascinating and interesting minerals to learn about. And I was midway through, three-quarters of the way through my course when I went to London, visited the History Museum, visited that gem collection, saw those slices and went, oh my God. But what happened was on that trip, I ended up finding and buying watermelon tourmaline for my mum in two pieces of jewelry. And I also bought a pink and green tourmaline in quartz, two separate pieces. It came to me on that trip in two different parts of the trip, one in London, one was in Amsterdam. So I had all of this pink and green tourmaline being thrown at me, but the whole trip, that trip was about joy. For me, that whole trip, it was the first time I'd been to Europe. My husband and I named it our month of Sundays because we literally had one whole month where we got to do whatever the hell we wanted. And we got to have fun everywhere. We spent a few days here, a few days there, a few days here, a few days there. We visited friends. We went to museums, we went to comedy shows. We went out, we ate, we did like all the touristy things. We did like mixing with locals. It was just an immersion into joy that I can't remember feeling before that time. And again, since I've definitely been working on trying to get there, but it's been through watermelon tourmaline that I've realized it's like when you build something and you create something that is safe, that foundation, that green exterior, your heart can just burst full. It can burst open and you can live that really joyful experience. And I found myself over the last 4 or 5 years where things have been less than joyful in quite a few ways, revisiting it in a really big way. And interestingly, I have a little skull made of watermelon tourmaline that you can't really see the green of, but it actually has two faces, one on either side. And it represents that sort of duality of what joy can bring to me. It's sort of like, it can be so human, like the human feeling of joy. It's like I feel joy because I'm with the people that I love, or I'm with my pets, or I'm somewhere that feels amazing. And then there's like that joy that comes through that's more universal. It's bigger. It's like something, you have a breakthrough and you feel this immense joy. You get to be with your partner and it's just all of a sudden you're relaxed and everything's switched off, and that universal joy flows through. That more pink tourmaline sort of joy flows through. And I find when we are able to, as tourmaline does in whatever color and flavor, cleanses and purifies and removes that which is of no use and of no service and is not helping our way forward, it's doing that over the heart center. And I always talk about the heart center with pink and green. I never use one exclusively. A lot of books will be just pink, one just green. You will see these different colors attributed. For me, it's always green and pink. It's always them together. It's always them enmeshed. Green for me represents a much more physical, how our physical body is, what our physical boundaries are, how we can put them in place. And then the more mushy center, the pink, the heart, the emotion, the love is able to be, is able to express, is able to share itself. And I found on my journey, what's been quite interesting is I've also connected to watermelon tourmaline with lepidolite. Mine has been this little cluster of lepidolite with watermelon tourmaline intergrown on it. Funnily enough, I got this cluster from Adam in one of his live sales that he did a few years ago. And the addition of lepidolite brings such a like just chill, it's such a relaxing energy, and I think that's where like some of the pink tourmalines do have lithium in them, right? There is that a little element of like just chill, bring yourself down a few notches. Yes, there is stress out there. Yes, there is a collective lot of crazy happening. Yes, there is grief, there is trauma. We are allowed to express and understand that, but also what can you do? What can you control? What's yours and what's everyone else's? Begin to separate yourself, begin to find your own space and go, actually, I'm allowed to feel good. I can feel joy, and I can actually separate myself from the guilt of feeling joyful, because that's quite a big thing that Watermelon Tourmaline has helped me with. Excuse me, is moving on from trauma, from grief, from death, from pain, and letting yourself feel joyful. That, what is it, guilt over joy is a really, really big thing when we're healing from trauma, when we're healing from passing, breakups, children moving out, moving country. Like whenever we go through these big shifts and big transformations in our lives, quite often we forget to give space to the grief and the fact that, okay, that hurt. And then once you do, you can put that down and you can go, okay, now I'm allowed to live. Now I'm allowed to do my thing. I can have some fun. And when I let myself have fun, this is the key here. Fun allows yourself to be clearer, more relaxed, more joyful. That allows you to be more decisive. That allows you to be better under stress. That allows you to be better when things are challenging again. And this is why I think Watermelon Tourmaline is so important, because it allows you to bring that fun, that joy, that happiness, and that clarity from your heart center, which then makes you able to face anything else head on or heart on, so you can actually not be challenged, not be thrown, and you can actually navigate through it with grace and strength that you probably weren't able to beforehand.
I absolutely love that. And I wasn't planning on kind of sharing this idea today. I normally talk about it when I talk about tea tree essential oil. But when I was learning psychological tarot, I learned about this idea of research has found that in the first 6 months of our lives, we see our mother, for want of a better term, as God, because she gives us everything she needs. She's the all provider. So she gives us milk and sustenance, she gives us comfort, she gives us warmth, she gives us that emotional support, that touch, all those different types of things. So this doesn't mean you had a bad mother, but if the baby perceives that there is something wrong with that relationship, so maybe mum has problems with her milk supply, maybe your room's a little bit cold, mum doesn't always come when you cry, maybe you're a bit of a whingy child or that type of thing. The child will start to conclude, well, there can't be anything wrong with mum because she's God, she's your provider. So if I'm not getting what I'm asking for, there must be something wrong with me. Now, as you're listening to this, you're probably wondering, well, what on earth was I thinking at 3 months of age? We can't remember. But we write that script early on, and how this plays out in our adult life is we find ourselves always trying to earn love. We have to do something to allow love to come into our lives. And this is where I think Watermelon Tourmaline could be absolutely amazing in realizing, you've heard us talk about today, it's about the ebb and the flow. It works so beautifully. I'm going to make the big call, and I'll ask my co-hosts in a minute if they want to agree or disagree with me, that this possibly could be the best crystal for the heart chakra because of that balancing in that need for that ebb and flow. And I find Watermelon Tourmaline, not just for heart chakra work, it's absolutely amazing. It can be really great in relationships to make sure there is that give and take. Funnily enough, both watermelon flower essence and watermelon juice also have, on a metaphysical point of view, helping with fertility. So any couple that is actually trying to start a family or increase the size of their family, you know, I've never been in that position myself, but I can imagine, there are lots of dynamics that go in there. There is the physicality of it, obviously, but there's also, as when you're trying to fall pregnant, when you are pregnant, and after the birth of the child, from a man's perspective, I can imagine it must be kind of awkward for a man who's like, what do I do here? It's kind of, the woman has the baby within her, but the man's like, how do I support you? What do I do? Is there that support? How can I play that role? So really great in helping to find that ebb and flow in that family side of things. But I would suggest that Watermelon Tourmaline, although we've talked a lot about love, put it in any context where we need that equality of behavior. I think would be great around the household for making sure that everyone in the family is contributing. I love to recommend it where there's maybe a imbalance in children, where children don't get along or play well, type of thing. Especially really great in families where there may be one child who's it could be a talented child, it could be a child with special need, where there's a risk where one child may get more attention than the others. Watermelon Tourmaline is a really good amulet in those types of families. I think it's great in workplaces where you want to have that cohesiveness, where the team is, working with each other, not against each other to try and get promotion, things like that. Sporting teams, it would be absolutely great. I think anywhere where you just want that, everyone is giving, everyone is taking. I think Watermelon Tourmaline can be really powerful in that way. So, so I think gridding it around is another really great thing. Wherever you want that equal ebb and flow to bring that in would be really, really beautiful.
I've always noticed that it is a great stone for cooperation and harmony, and I hadn't ever considered it in terms of its ability to help balance that sort of giving and taking, giving and um, for me, it always felt like it was really rooted in that idea of love, like in terms of, love for self, love for community. Like we show up and we work in harmony together because when we are coming from that same place and we have those same goals, even if they differ a little bit in what they look like, how they're expressed, like at the core, we kind of all have those same goals of, community and love and safety and harmony and that sort of thing. So for me, it always felt a little bit more um, like that group harmony, that cooperation was coming from that place, but I hadn't ever considered that, yeah, it could really much be and more about this balance that it brings. Because I've definitely always felt this concept of balance from this stone as well. And I had always kind of interpreted that as balance between the internal and the external, but I can see that on a bigger scale as well, and how that would show up in a family group, in a work environment, in a community that's larger, just a little bit different scale.
I can totally echo that because one of my favorite pieces of Watermelon Tourmaline is quite a special one because it's actually a Paraiba. So it's got the greeny teal blue around the pink, and it's given a connection that comes up into this like throat energy, this communication energy that's helped me to allow myself to like express the emotional center, which I think when you're able to actually not hold back what you're feeling, you can work from a more loving place. You can actually communicate better with everyone else. Everyone can be on that even playing field a lot more happier because we're all sort of coming from that place of honesty. We're coming from that place of love. And the Paraiba, interesting thing, it's blue green, but from copper from the heart. We've spoken about this in previous podcasts. I think as a variety of watermelon that's not your traditional green pink, more that tealy with the pink center, it's given that, for me, a more of an understanding of needing to express that love, needing to express what you're feeling, because if you're not expressing it, you're actually hindering yourself and everyone around you.
Mm-hmm. So this is your opportunity to lift me up or strike me down. Nicholas, I said Watermelon Tourmaline is the best crystal for the heart chakra. There's probably going to be exceptions where obviously every person's heart chakra has different challenges and different issues, and there could be other crystals, but would you agree or disagree? Is it the best crystal for the heart chakra in general?
Oh, I'm really bad at superlatives because I'm all about the individuation of things. It's definitely up there, but like if like desert island, I can only have one stone to work on my heart center, it's going to be emerald. Um, which doesn't surprise anyone in this space or anyone who's listening. If you've heard me talk about emerald, you know that's my choice, but I'm really inspired after this conversation to sit with my favorite chunky emerald and my favorite watermelon tourmaline and see how they get along together. Because that's actually not a combination I think I've ever sat down to do any personal work with.
You'll have to let us know for sure. Hopefully that doesn't become a crystal fight club. Who will win Nicholas's favorite heart chakra one? What about you, Kyle? Is it the ultimate heart chakra crystal?
I think for people to get their hands on easily, I would say yes. From like an economical point of view, it is getting more expensive. But of the heart center stones that are like absolutely incredible, I would say it's definitely right up there. If it's not sort of, I'm really blessed to have two crystals that are blending kunzite and hiddenite. So it's like watermelon tourmaline, but it's spodumene. So it has the green and the pink within that one crystal together. For me, that vibrates on a level and exists on a level that I haven't compared to anything else that I've worked with. But for easily accessible, and for like mostly you'll be able to get it wherever you are in the world, I would say watermelon tourmaline really covers it, because tourmaline as a stone itself is compatible with everyone. It's really easy for everyone to get along with and connect with. I think everyone already understands the essence of what tourmaline can do. So connecting to the heart, I think is excellent.
Yes. I have a piece too, which is half headnight, half kunzite as well. So I guess if I had to separate them in my own mind, because I like to categorize, maybe watermelon tourmaline is that more everyday kind of into life and that type of thing. I think when we're getting up into our kunzite, say headnights, we're really getting into that spiritual vibration and that type of thing as well. But yeah, now I know I can bet on Ashley. She said it was maybe her favorite crystal. Is it the ultimate heart chakra crystal, Ashley? What do you reckon?
Oh, I think it depends so much on our intention. So I'm like always big on intention and purpose when working with any stone and, what I'm feeling guided to at that particular moment. When I think of my heart space, because I kind of work on a little bit different view of the energy body these days, and I don't lean as much toward the traditional chakra system as I used to in my work. So for me, I'm kind of like at three major centers. I'm like brow, heart, and belly, and those are my kind of like energetic power points that I turn to. So when I think of the heart, like the stone that speaks to me the most, kind of always, although I wouldn't even categorize it in my top 10 favorite stones, maybe, is morganite. For me, that is like my ultimate kind of soothing. I don't know. It's like my safe space for a crystal, and for me, that heart has to be that safe space. So when I think of like that stone that I'm going to for that safety, security, nurturing, like you were talking about those feelings of being connected with like mother, like that for me is really, really speaks to me. But there are other times where heart is a little bit more fiery, a little bit more passionate. I might turn to something like a ruby fuchsite. There are times when heart is rooted more in sovereignty, and I might choose something totally different. Like it always kind of depends for me on intention, but watermelon tourmaline is always going to be one of my favorite stones, and so it's always going to make that list.
One thing I'm a really big fan of is, that we don't just talk about what a crystal is good for, but how people, I know lots of people that are either watching us or listening, they've got a piece at home and they're like, well, what do I do with it next? And I loved Ashley's example of, if you've got that piece you can look through, that's an amazing idea. I love working with it with the heart chakra and actually visualizing a fire, a pink fire with a green outer. Start that with the heart and actually grow that, and you can grow that to surround you, and that would be beautifully protective, especially if you feel you need to, be enshrouded by love in a maybe an unloving environment for a little while as well. And you could even send that, out beyond your personal space to somewhere in the world, someone who maybe needs that type of thing as well. So I think it would be beautiful in that meditation space with that visualization. Kyle, is there any kind of practical uses you can think of for watermelon tourmaline?
For me, I love to add watermelon tourmaline to a bit of a beautification of my space when I need a bit of uplifting, because as you may or may not see and know, I'm a maximalist at my core. When things are white and dull, I feel very depressed and I need that boost of color. So sometimes it's about getting some roses with some greenery still attached, some flowers with some greenery still attached in a vase with some watermelon tourmaline around it to just add that life to my space so I feel better about things. And when I feel better about things in my space, I can exude that wherever I go. And I find Watermelon Tourmaline, because of the green, the physical side, and then the pink through the heart, more emotional when you've got this thing that you can see and then something you can smell. Maybe you just set up your diffuser and you add some, of your favorite flower essential oil to your diffuser and you add that. Maybe you do it in that way. But for me, I like the physicalization, what I can see, what I can smell. And it just helps me to feel better about myself, my space, my life. And then that exudes everywhere else.
I love that idea of combining the different senses together. One thing that I teach is something I created called a crystal cauldron. So if you are an essential oil lover, you get your diffuser, and a lot of the time we'll put certain crystals, and hopefully don't just go putting all your crystals or your rare crystals in diffusers, because we know that sometimes water and crystals don't mix. But tumbled stones are great. Popping that in there, we put crystals in water and drink it, shower in it, do all these different things. If you're popping it in a diffuser, not only when you're diffusing, are you diffusing the essential oils, but you're diffusing that crystal energy around the space as well. So you've got a small bit of tumbled or a safe bit of watermelon tourmaline you could pop in there. That could be a nice combo as well. Nicholas, what about you? Can you think of a practical way we could possibly use watermelon tourmaline?
For sure. So one of my favorite, like really easy exercises for working with crystals, I call crystal breathing. And we can either choose a focal point purposefully, if we're talking about the heart and watermelon tourmaline, place it on the heart. Or you can also ask yourself, where in my body do I feel the greatest resonance to this stone? And then place the stone there. And wherever you do, imagine that that has magically transformed into your nose and you're breathing in and out through that stone. So every in-breath is not just drawing in life force, but that life force is being qualified by, it's being transformed by passing through that stone, it's being augmented by moving through it. And then on the out breath, we can release anything that's not in harmony with the blessings, the virtues, the healing properties that that stone has to offer. So for working with watermelon tourmaline, this would be a really good way to kind of give us a physical, tangible, corporeal reset of what love and boundaries could mean for us, with that inflow and outflow, that ebb and flow of love, of learning how to prioritize self-care, of having the container that holds your self-care in place. Your body is the manifestation of that. So just find that place in your body where it feels comfortable to hold the stone and visualize yourself breathing through it. And one of my favorite little tips to give people is don't assume what that energy is going to look like based on what the stone looks like. We might go, okay, well, obviously I'm going to see pink and green flowing in and out. And you might. You also might not. I just did this this kind of exercise with a bunch of stones, a whole group of people last weekend. And I mean, every experience was different. Everyone had something surprising to say. So the stones show up for us in so many great ways when we just surrender to it.
One other simple practice I would love to share, which you could totally do along with Nicholas's breathing exercise, I think these would make a great accompaniment, is get outside with your crystals, and especially anything that's in a little slice like this. I just love for this. On a sunny day, go out there, hold that crystal in front of your body between you and the sun. So you can hold it over your heart, over your brow, wherever, like Nicholas said, wherever in your body is sort of calling you, and just let that light shine through and bathe your body, bathe your aura with the light that's coming through that stone. I think there's something so magical about this, and just feeling it sort of enter your aura, and especially if you're accompanying that with some great breathing, just really drawing it in. But there's something so activating about getting out in the sunshine with your stones that makes your crystals happy, it makes you happy. And like Kyle said, this is a stone of joy. So if you need that good pick-me-up, that's a great way to do it.
I think that's a beautiful thing to remind people of. These are something that come from nature, and we spend, about over 90% in both the stats in both Australia and America, and I'm sure in many other parts of the world, up to 90 or above percent of the time inside, very, very removed from nature. We love crystals, I feel, because they are this little gift of nature, and I feel every time I've taken my crystals outside and done the same practice that I've done inside, the crystal stings more and you're going to get much more effect. So yeah, definitely get it out there and do that. Now, I feel we've created a bit of a problem with this podcast because today we've just talked about watermelon tourmaline, but then we mentioned emerald and morganite and kunzite and hiddenite and ruby fuchsite. And so our list of crystals that we need to cover is getting longer and longer and longer. So we might be here for a bit of a while, but we will definitely be here next week to explore another crystal. We'd love to hear in the comment which crystal you'd love us to confab about. Until then, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Blessed be.